But so yeah, when you were talking about, I saw you were talking about that it is the kind of the 20th anniversary of Wadjet Eye Games,
Yeah.
which is wild. So I guess like kind of going back to the beginning, I wanted to talk to you about like, can you tell me about how when you first started making adventure games, kind of the reason behind that, and then your decision to stop doing it as kind of like freeware projects and make the Shiva a paid game?
Oh, sure. Well, I guess I grew up playing adventure games. It was kind of a language and a just a medium that I was familiar with. And I always wanted to make one. Like you, I wanted to make text adventures. Back in college, I discovered this dates me a bit, but in college, I discovered TADS,
Hmm.
the text adventure development something, I assume studio or system. And I tried making a text adventure because I grew up playing the Infocom games and I had a little black and white Mac Power book. And so text adventures are all I could play on the thing. And I just tried making some, never went anywhere. I graduated, I moved to New York City, um, and always tinkered with writing, but nothing ever really came of it. And then the towers went down. Living in New York, 2001 September, and I was in between jobs. I had been recently laid off from this boring corporate job, and I discovered Adventure Games Studio, and I thought, well, maybe I can make one of these. I discovered Reality on the Norm, and which is kind of the shared universe of games. And I played a few of them. I thought I could maybe contribute to this thing, so I made a little game in a weekend called The Repossessor, where you play the Grim Reaper, which I always joke probably said a lot about my state of mind at the time. Like again, just after 9/11, blah blah blah. So I made that little game in maybe a weekend or two, and uploaded it to, I don't know what website I was able to upload to back then, and people played it and they seemed to like it, and so that encouraged me to make more of them, and that was the wonderful thing about it. Like for the first time I was able to create something. I'd always liked writing. I was creating something, and um, people were seeing it and responding and giving me feedback pretty quickly. And from there, the bug kind of bit me. Like, oh, I can make something and put it out there, and people will play it. And then that became a positive feedback loop that hasn't let go of me since.
And then, like, why did you? What gave you kind of the courage to say, okay, this one is good enough that I should charge for it?
Oh, well, fast forward, I guess maybe 4 or 5 years. I had just finished teaching English in South Korea for a little under a year. And I had come back home to New York. And it was this weird situation because before I left, I owned this little apartment in Manhattan. In like it was 2006, and when I went away, I rented it out, and the lease wasn't up yet. So I moved back and was kind of homeless because I couldn't move back into my apartment. So I moved in with my parents, and I was around 30. I was just turned 30 years old. My parents were retired, and I was living with them. And there's nothing that makes you feel more like a loser than being unemployed at 30, living with your parents. So, I, even though these were different circumstances, I had just come off a big year-long gig, but still, I decided to kind of pretend I was working by going to a cafe and making this little game called the Shiva. I was like, well, well, I'll as long as I'm there from 9 to 5, because that is what a job is, apparently, 9 to 5. If I'm there from at least before 9 till after 5, then I could pretend I'm working on something, whatever. I was, and so I made this game for a jam, and then when I finished it, I enjoyed the process so much that I decided I didn't want to do anything else, and I wanted to see if I could make it work. And then by then, I was able to move back into my apartment. I had money saved up from my salary when I was away and from the rent I got from renting out the apartment. And I decided, well, I've got some money saved up. I'm in between jobs. It's now or never. I was never going to have a better opportunity to make a go of this. And I decided to use the Shiva, the game that I made, and release that commercially. I added the voice acting, I got some graphics improved, added the commentary. I was trying to give it some value to justify charging for it because I had already released it for free. And I decided, well, like I said, when else am I going to do this? So I did that, and then I released that in about took another maybe 2 months to get the commercial version out. Released that, and it wasn't this tremendous big success, but it got known enough that I was able to earn some money and keep going, kind of supplement the savings that I had to get the next game out, and then things just kind of evolved from there.
And that was the show. That would be the first time that you used like the Wadjet Eye name.
Yes, I believe so. I think when I released the Shiva, it was just under my name originally. And then when I decided, well, I need to make a go of this for real, I came up with the name Wadjet Eye, registered that, incorporated it, got a corporate bank account, and did all that. And then I just re-release. I didn't re-release so much as go into the source files and change the opening splash logo to Dave Gilbert whatever to Wadjet Eye, and then the next game I released, the Blackwell Legacy, was Wadjet Eye.
And was there any specific reason that you chose Wadjet Eye as a name?
Very
And
boring story.
well, I think it's interesting that when you maybe this is me thinking too much into it, but when you think like traditionally of the Wadjet Eye, it's almost always depicted like as the Eye of Horus, but I believe
Mhm.
yours is the flipped one. It's the Eye of Ra, correct?
It's a little stylized. It's
Hmm.
when I was younger, reading a lot of stories about Egyptology, I saw the symbol of the Wadjet Eye and thought it was really cool. And I said to myself, if I ever need a logo for anything, I'm going to use that. And when I was trying to come up with what to call my studio, game studio, whatever company, I came up with all these clever names. Nothing stuck. And I was on the registration page of, I believe, iPowerWeb was the web host. I don't know if they're still around, but I was like, okay, what am I going to call myself? I have no idea. Like, well, I know I'm probably going to use the Wadget Eye as a logo, so whatever, I'll just call myself that. Again, not again, but I had no illusions that this was going to go anywhere. I was optimistic that it could maybe last 5 months or so, and then I would have to get a real job. I had no plans on this being like the career for the rest of my life. So if I had known that, I probably would have chosen a different name. But like I said, I couldn't think of anything, so I don't know what I would have chosen. But yeah, the actual logo that I use is not the exact Wadjet Eye that you see, in hieroglyphics or whatever. Not hieroglyphics, but it's not the real one because I even knew then. Actually, was talking to logo person who was designing my logo. He said that I wanted something very unique to me, not the actual symbol, because then anytime anyone saw that symbol, they would confuse it the Wadjet Eye Game Company. So I would want something stylized that looked like the Wadjet Eye, but wasn't exactly the Wadjet Eye. That would be like, oh, that's the game company. So that was very smart. I'm glad I took that advice. So yeah, it's not the exact one you see. It's not the exact Wadjet Eye. It's slightly different, which I think was a smart move too.
And so you say then after that you kind of went into starting the Blackwell series. When I assume when you started the first one, you kind of like you never know. It's like, oh, I'm going to make 6 or 7 of these. You just think, oh, this is a good idea. I'm going to
Hmm.
try this, and then I assume you just fell in love with the setting and characters, or like I guess so many games in your catalog either are directly tied into the Blackwell series or like have callbacks to them. And
Yeah, it's kind of
what's
its
the
own expanded universe. Well, with Blackwell, I came up with the concepts and the characters, and I optimistically thought like, oh, I can make these games forever. I could make. I jotted down ideas for like 10 of them, um, because I'm like, oh, the Shiva took 2 months to make, and then I made the first Blackwell game that took 4 months, and of course I didn't really think that. Oh, I nearly killed myself getting that game done, and I was a single guy living alone, very little expenses, didn't need a lot of money to keep going, um, but I very quickly realized that yeah, games take a long time to make. There's such thing as self care. I probably couldn't do Blackwell forever, if only because after a few games in, I started to have trouble making the concept interesting and new. I could have just told ghost stories forever, but each game I wanted to do something new, raise the stakes, tell different kinds of stories, and I was running into the limitations of that fast. And I was kind of getting a little not tired of it, but I knew that let me back up. The first Blackwell game was the first commercial game I ever released. The Shiva I don't really count because I didn't intend for that to be sold commercially when I made it. But the Blackwell Legacy was the first game where I sat down with the intention of selling it. So that was the very first game I ever made commercially, and it's where I made all my mistakes. And I did get better as I went along, but that didn't matter because as good as any potential future Blackwell game could be, anyone new coming to the series would start with the first one, which isn't as good, and they would probably bounce off of it before they get to the better ones. And so by the time I got to like the fifth Blackwell game, I kind of knew I had to end it. If I ever really wanted things to grow, I needed to break away from it and start over with something fresh. Which is why in the fifth Blackwell game, I decided, yeah, this is it. I'm going to end it here. And I had a few ideas for other games, but I decided to just, excuse me, focus all my effort into this one game, make it as good as I possibly could get it, and go out with all guns blazing. And I do think Epiphany, Blackwell Epiphany, the last one, is very, very, very good, but it's still tied to the very first game, which is why I sell them as a bundle now, and why the games always sold better as a bundle than they ever did as individual games. So I think breaking off from it was probably the best idea. But I still have a lot of fondness for Blackwell and the characters and the setting, which is why whenever I do other games set in New York, I imply that they're all part of the same universe, that they all take place in the same version of New York City. So you have callbacks to some characters, you have cameos, you have references and things like that. And I think the longtime fans enjoy that. I enjoy it myself, but I do try to make it. I do try to write them so you don't have to have played the old games. I'm not Marvel. I don't want you to have to like watch 20 years worth of movies to get my current stuff. So it's fun if you get it, but if you don't, you're not missing anything. So that's kind of where I go from there. And it gives me
Um,
an attachment to it that I wouldn't have otherwise, which I think kind of works in my favor.
well, going back a little bit, you said that when you're sitting down to like start the Blackwell as kind of your first commercial project, what are some of those like big mistakes that you feel like you made that you wouldn't that you kind of like learn not to make today?
Oh, well, with Blackwell Legacy, overindulgent wordy dialogue. They talk a lot nonstop.
Is
And
the bane of many point and click adventures.
yeah, there's three big scenes where there's this massive, massive info dumps that take place one after the other with no returning control to the player, no place to save, no place to stop, no way to pause, because back then AGS games couldn't do pausing.
Hmm.
And so that there's just so much, it wasn't very elegant describing that backstory kind of is what the whole series hinges on, and it was told in a very clunky, very inelegant way that I still
Likely with
really,
the
really
text
regret.
probably directly over the characters' heads because if you have more than 3 lines on AGS, it just completely destroys the character's facial features.
Yeah, and it starts with a very weird puzzle where you're not allowed into your own building because there's a building serviceman strike, and the guy they got to like be the doorman that day didn't recognize Rosa because she rarely leaves home. I admit that that is something that actually did happen in my building, and what happened to Rosa was something I worried would happen to me. I'm like, I don't talk to anyone in my building. Like, they won't recognize me. What if they don't let me in? I was worried about that happening to me. So I'd had that happen to Rosa. That wouldn't actually happen. They would, whatever. But and so there's a lot of weird. It's a weird introduction to this series that I really do regret. It's just very awkwardly told, and it's very short. But that's fine. I do stand by it. I do stand by Blackwell Legacy now because it was the best I think I could have done with the experience that I had at the time, the resources I had at the time, and the clout I had at the time. I had like no money, no experience, no one knew who I was. I had a very limited amount of time to get something out before I went broke, so I just had to make something and get it out. And I think under those circumstances, I don't see how I could have done much better. There are other games where I feel like I could have done better and should have done better, but didn't. But that one is where I think, you know what, cut myself some slack. I think I did the best I could, even though I would not do it the same way now.
Well, I mean, it clearly worked because
Oh, thank you.
it has a number of sequels, and then Wadjet Eye Games now it doesn't just develop games; it also acts as like a producer for other people's projects, right?
Yes.
It
Hmm.
starts with like Puzzle Bots in what 2010, and then I know y'all worked with Francisco Gonzalez for Golden Wake, who everybody should go play with. Rosewater came out last year, very good,
Hmm.
and so and then a lot of others. Techno Babylon, Nighthawks. What's the reason behind like always also moving into a producer role, and like what projects are you attracted to when you're like looking for something like that?
Okay. Well, to the first part, why I got into it, I kind of fell into it. I was published at one point. One of my games was published. I worked with a company called Play First to make Emerald City Confidential, and I was hubristic to think that that taught me how to be a publisher. I'm like, I could just do what they do. I could be a publisher. I can do this. Um, and because at the time, I felt that I needed to spread out the risk a bit more. The games took about a year or two to make, and then by the time the next game came out, I was pretty much out of money. And if the game bombed, then I was done. There would be nothing left in the tank. And so I thought kind of hubristically that if I paid someone to make a game and publish it under Wadget Eye, that would spread out the risk more. And so I hooked up with Erin Robinson, who did some work for me. She did the art for Blackwell Unbound. I'm very grateful for her because she was a college kid at the time, and it was kind of a summer job for her. Because at that time I was almost out of money, had nothing to work with, and did a she did a really good job for the little I could pay her, and I'm always very grateful. Um, but uh, but I saw her work and I thought, hey, do you want me to publish this game of yours? And she said yes. And so we made the game and we released it. And so that it's cute. It's cute robots. It's very very cute. And that kind of cemented me as a publisher. Even though I think if I made a mistake during that time, I ended up programming it myself, which kind of defeated the point of getting more products out more quickly. Um, so I was kind of paying for the privilege of working, which whatever, I think in the long run it worked out well for me because it cemented me as a publisher, and then other developers started approaching me with their games, and that's how Josh Nurnberger came to me with Gemini Rue and so on and so forth. And Gemini Rue is really what at the time put us on the map. That game was just exceptionally good, and so that I'm very grateful to that game and to Josh for letting us take care of it all this time.
And so when people do come to you, what's the sort of game that you're looking for that you say, yes, this would fit into like our portfolio?
It varies. I mean, it's always just a gut feeling or just a Dave likes this. Um, I know that folks have said that even though a lot of the games come from different developers, even different artists and writers, they all feel like they were developed under the same banner. And I guess it's just because they all fall under the category of Dave likes it. And I don't know. There's no rhyme or reason to why I pick something. It gets me at just the right moment. I'm in between projects or what have you. Sometimes I approach them, sometimes they approach me. There's no rhyme or reason. There's never been like a fast hard rules to how I do anything. So how I've managed to last this long is a mystery to even me.
um, well, I guess kind of segue from that statement. I think some people, you've probably had to fight for 20 years against people saying that about point and click games themselves. I mean, even as recently as the, what is it, the February edition of this year's Game Informer, there's a good article about adventure games by, I have it right here, hold on. Andrew King, and in that you say when people are talking about like some adventure games being outdated, you kind of like push back on that and say like, should I innovate in adventure games? Like being asked, what's the future of point and clicks? Is like being asked, what's the future of books?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And but many of your games have kind of like made innovations in the point and click genre, whether it's like the memorization system and resonance, or like the like in Unavowed, how I spoke earlier about working for Screenrant. I did the Nintendo Switch review of Undertale for Screenrant, and I
Oh,
loved it.
okay.
I loved which I assume is like Bioware inspired party
Very
variation
much
and
so.
multiple endings.
It
So
is the Bioware narrative structure. That's how I describe it because it's
yeah,
an easy shorthand to describe what the game is.
well, because everybody yeah, everyone knows what you mean when you say that.
Mhm.
But at the same time, like, how much do you think you can push at the boundaries of like point and clicks before they become unrecognizable? Like, where is that line for you?
I have no idea. It's just is it fun? That's kind of where I draw the line. I mean, I think the reason why I say it's like asking what's the future of movies or how do we innovate books is because I mean, yeah, you get bigger budgets, better special effects, better techniques, and more interesting stories you can tell. And I think that is where I push innovation is what kind of stories can I tell using this medium of the point and click adventure game. And sometimes the story necessitates doing something a little different with the interface. But I don't start developing the game or designing the game with that in mind. It's more that the story and the narrative necessitate an innovation. I don't want to start with the innovation because I think then it becomes very superficial. It becomes very gimmicky. Um, with Old Skies, I knew it was time travel, and like the time rewinding stuff just sort of happened very organically as a result of the story, that kind of thing. Unavowed, the whole Bioware style party building stuff was very tried and true. Like it was something in, you had played those games for years, mostly by Bioware. Everyone was very familiar with it. I already knew it worked. I don't really consider that an innovation because I knew it worked. It's something that we all are familiar with. So I just put it in a point and click adventure game. It wasn't really that earth shattering. Um, it made it a lot more challenging, but it wasn't anything I hadn't already done. I already did the character stuff, the story design, the whatever structures. I just had to do a lot more of it to take into account all the different party combinations. So it just took a little bit more time, but I wouldn't call it particularly groundbreaking. I'm putting myself a little bit down here. I guess, yeah, no, everything I do is special and unique and amazing and earth blowing, earth shattering. Yes, no, no, no. Um, yeah, so I don't really think in terms of like, how can I push the genre forward? I don't really think that way. Because like I said, then it would just turn very gimmicky. I have to please myself first and foremost. I'm drawn to make these games and tell these stories for a reason. and I have to remain true to that above everything else. I think that's what gives them a certain sincerity that can't be faked.
Well, I think that sincerity is part of the reason why those games do resonate with people. I mean, you were kind of like putting yourself down a bit, but like to push back on that, in 2020, the second edition of the Art and Point and Click game, or the Art of Point and Click Adventure Games book,
Mhm.
which is a beautiful just rendition of like
I have a copy.
yeah. So you know, in that book, they name Wadjet Eye Games as the successor to Sierra and LucasArts in keeping the point and click genre alive.
No
So
pressure.
that was in 2020.
Yeah.
6 years on from that now, how do you feel about like the state of the point and click genre today?
I mean, it's bigger than it ever was. Last year alone, I can't even. I know that the year before that, in 2024, the website Adventure Game Hotspot said that there were over 300 point and click style adventure games released. And I know last year in 2025, that number was much, much higher. So more of these games are being released than ever, and a number of them are much better, sell better than mine. And, that's great. That's fine. I think the more that this genre is known and the more it's taken seriously, the better I do. So I never wanted to be the whatchamacallit, like standard bearer for these for a whole genre. I think that's too much pressure, and I like to keep things simple. Um, I mean, it's I think that if um, yeah, I just I don't really think I don't really think anything about it. I'm grateful that I'm able to make these games, and I've been doing it for so long, and I'm kind of considered an authority on it, but that's only because I've been doing it for so damn long. So I do like it. I do, I like my position. I like where I am. I like that I can make these games, and I have a fan base and a following and a reputation that's been built up over 20 years. But yeah, I don't really think of myself as like like the load bearer for a whole genre. Like I really don't want to be that, because it's too much pressure.
I understand that. When you look back over like all 20 years, do you have like, I know it's a little bit like picking a favorite child, but do you have like a personal favorite from all of the games that you worked on, or is it just whatever currently is in development right now?
Oh, good gosh. There are games I like for different reasons. I think Unavowed is something I'm particularly proud of because I wasn't sure if I could pull it off. It was ambitious.
Yes.
I kind of was a little very glib about it before. I'm like, oh yeah, it's nothing I hadn't done before, but that's just it. It was nothing I had done before. Before I started working on it, I wasn't sure I could do it, and I was very happy to see that I could, and the fact that it works really well and is very cohesive, and it's satisfying to play and people still like it all these years later. Immensely satisfying. um, Old Skies is probably the most personal game I've ever written. It took me by surprise and really delighted me as I was making it. And so I'm very happy and proud of that one for entirely different reasons. Unavowed, I wouldn't call that personal. I'm very proud of it because it's the type of game I love playing. Old Skies is the type of game that really took some really like um, it really enabled me to process some stuff, shall we say? And I'm very grateful to it for helping me do that. Um, so yeah, I like the games for different reasons. Blackwell Epiphany is another one I'm very happy with because it is the game when I first started making games commercially. Blackwell Epiphany is the game I had in my head. And that's how I wanted Blackwell Legacy to look and feel and play. Didn't get there, but I finally got there 5 games later. And I'm very happy that I was able to eventually get there. And of course, then I ended it right away, which, I don't know what that says about me. But so if I have to pick 3 games, it's those 3, but for different reasons.
And you talk about how Unavowed is kind of like it's the type of game that you like to play. What are you playing right now? What's the last favorite game that you played?
Oh, I'm not even playing an adventure or narrative focused game right now. I'm playing a game called Aethys, which is this base builder resource management thing, which is just very. It's got its core game loop that's very addictive and a lot of fun. Um, but yeah, I do generally my genre of choice are those like choice based RPGs like the BioWare or the Baldur's Gate 3 or whatever. I know I'm looking forward to Greedfall. I know that just came out recently and I know that's kind of it's got that same structure. So when I have some time I'm going to check that one out. But those are the types of games I really like to play. I find those the
Nice.
most satisfying.
Nice. Um, so I just have a few more questions, and they're just kind of like rapid fire ones that I just think are fun. If you had to pick one point and click game to introduce a new player to the genre, what game would you pick?
Oh my goodness gracious. All right. Top of my head I'll say Loom,
Mm,
because it's very user friendly. It's beautiful. It tells a very deep story, and it's not too difficult. And so you play it, it won't frustrate you, and you'll leave wanting more like it. So I would say Loom.
it's a good choice. And then if you could make a game with an IP that you don't have the rights to, what would it be?
Oh, easy. Dresden Files.
Oh, fun. I would
Yep.
play that.
Unavowed is basically what happens when Dave doesn't knows he'll never get the Dresden Files license. It's basically Dresden Files with the serial numbers removed, for at least at first. Like then I kind of went my own way, which is how it should be. Everyone's inspired by something, but I friggin' love Dresden Files. Like I've loved it for God knows how long. Almost 20 years I've been reading that series, and I just love it. So yeah, Dresden Files for sure.
Cool. All right. Well, Dave, thank you so much for. I know the Steam sale, I believe, is ending in probably like 30 minutes or
An
something like
hour,
that.
yeah.
But is there anything that you want to plug or share with people that you're currently working on?
Well, we're working on two projects right now, publishing two projects right now. One is Nighthawks by Richard Cobbett, which is this vampire uh, RPG type thing. It's kind of a Bloodlines slash Sunless Sea hybrid, which is very different from what we usually do, but it's gorgeous. Richard's an amazing writer. There's also a game that Ben Chandler, our the Wadjet Eye artist, he is spearheading a game called Guilt and Gilt, which is this just gonzo sci-fi fantasy with just gods and magic, and it's just gorgeous. I think Ben is just happy not to have to draw another city street or office. So he's just like weird fantasy crap from here till Sunday. Ah! So he's excited to be working on that, and it's nice because I can kind of act as a producer while I slowly figure out what I'm going to do next. It's nice to have a bit of breathing room. So that's worked out pretty well. Doing the producing publishing thing as well as the developing thing and switching back and forth kind of works out really well for me because I have those moments in between projects where stuff is happening, but I don't have to like stress about being productive myself. It's kind of nice that I'm in that position.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
You're very welcome. This was short and sweet. Love it.
Yeah.